Last week on Ant Invasion, I constructed some outworlds for 2 of my Fedele colonies, which are going really well so far. And at the end of that video, I asked you guys what vid you'd like to see this week. And by popular demand, you guys wanted to see all my ant colonies. So let's get to it. Alrighty guys, before we start, I'd like to address that yes, in fact, I don't have very many colonies. And so yeah, originally I only wanted to keep a couple of colonies. In fact, last season I gave away a majority of the colonies I owned to a couple of my friends. Now that the nuptial flights have started again here in Australia, I plan on catching lots of queens, and rather than selling them or gifting them, I'll try and keep some more variety instead. Okay, so first of all we have the infamous colony of meat ants living in the desert of Down Under, which I recently updated the landscape of. If you watched my last video on these guys, you know that their larvae hasn't been developing into pupae yet. And so far I've just blamed this on the weather, as it is winter down here in Australia. But now that it's September and the weather is warming back up, it shouldn't be too long before we start seeing some pupae action. But some good news on the colony is that the queen has actually been laying some eggs lately that have been developing incredibly fast, which is a sign that the queen is doing well also. Alrighty, so I think you guys have seen this colony munch on food a lot on this channel, so I'll give it a little break. Let's move on to the next colony that I own. Here we have a fairly large colony of Fedele that, as I've said in the past, was sent to me from Tank Society way back when they were called Antmate. So far they've progressed somewhat well, although any veterans on this channel will know that I went into Fortnite rehab for at least 2 or 3 months earlier this year, so that's probably where the colony lacked the protein, which led to not many workers being produced. This has set them back quite a bit. After the whole Fortnite incident, the weather changed into winter, and so they were pretty much stuck in that state for a solid 4 to 5 months. I did a pretty quick recap on this colony in last week's video, and they seem to still be munching on the cricket I gave them, which is pretty odd as usually they annihilate the thing within a couple of hours. The colony has done a pretty good job of flipping their honey dispenser on its side, so I'll go in there and put it back upright. Overall, I reckon this colony of Fedele is going really well. They have lots of eggs and larvae, so the future's looking good for them. Here's another one of my Fedele colonies. In fact, it's the huge 13 queen Fedele colony. Once again, I did a pretty quick info sesh on this colony last video, so I'll try and keep it simple, although I did discover something pretty sad, but at the same time quite interesting. While getting some footage of the queens, I saw one of the queens actually go for another, and she actually chopped and munted one of her legs. Here you can see her limping off, while the culprit quickly runs the other way. I then took a close look at the other queens and discovered that another one actually had no legs at all, and she was basically just sitting there. I noticed that although she was physically disabled, some workers would come by and feed her. I found this really sad. With that being said, I'm not too sure how many queens there will be left by the time the colony fills this nest, but I'll be optimistic about it. But so far they look to be going well. But taking a look at the Outworld is another story. The cricket head I gave them last week is looking rather old, so I'll take it out. And as for the activity in the Outworld, not much has happened lately. I rarely see more than 1 or 2 workers out there. but this is understandable as they are still a very young colony. Taking a look around the room, we have another colony. This time it's a colony of either Ochatellis or Aerodynamics. We aren't too sure yet. I've made a super simple setup for this colony, involving a takeaway container, some fluon, and some sand, and that's it. The colony is housed in a test tube setup and has around 15 to 20 workers. I fed them a cricket leg along with some honey, so let's see what happens. A worker eventually found the honey, and soon after, heaps more followed. If you look closely, you can see their abdomens expanding as their social stomachs fill with sugary goodness. They brought their findings back to the queen and brood, and started sharing it with the squad. Originally, this colony was going to be my younger brother's, as he wanted to start his own ant keeping channel, although his interest for keeping ants shortly crumbled, so now I enjoy this colony instead. So the next species I'd like to show you isn't necessarily a colony, but instead a queen, although I thought I should include it anyway. This is my Myrmecia loweri queen that we originally thought was a Myrmecia pilosula, although my mate Riley from Aussie Ants confirmed that this wasn't true. Currently she doesn't have any eggs, and she hasn't laid any in the past either, so hopefully she is fertile, as I'm still yet to receive any workers from any of the bull ants I've kept, which is a shame, as bull ants are easily some of my favourite species of ants to keep. To entice her to lay some eggs, I have a small plastic dish full of honey, which she occasionally goes to and drinks from. As well as that, I usually feed her a small cricket or body parts of larger crickets, although today I'll see if she'd like a fruit fly. At first, I semi-crushed the fly so it could still walk around, but couldn't fly, therefore it would be easier for her to catch it, although she wasn't all that interested in it. After a while of trial and error, I eventually just killed the fruit fly and gave it to her, and she happily brought it back into her test tube setup. All I can say is fingers crossed she lays some eggs, because I'm just dying to keep a well-established colony of bull ants. Now onto the second last colony. Once again, this is a colony of Fedeli. Seriously, I absolutely love Fedeli, if you guys couldn't already tell. This colony is going fairly well. They have around 20 or so workers and a bit of brood, but nothing to boast about. With this colony, I haven't fed them in a while, so I reckon I should feed them something. Just like the Myrmecia queen, I fed them another fruit fly. I don't really think the colony requires much more, to be honest. I took out the cotton and heaps of ants poured out. I tried my best to put as many back in as possible, but some of them just completely disappeared on my desk. I then put the fruit fly in, and surprisingly, the first member of the colony to attack the fly was actually the queen herself. After a while, they settled down and the rest of the workers started shredding the fly to pieces. Considering what happened the first time I opened up the test tube, I think I'll just insert the honey using a syringe instead. Now, yet again, the final colony I own is another Fedeli. So rather than doing the whole feeding procedure, I'm just going to give them a fruit fly and another test tube, as their current one is getting pretty skanky. First of all, I used some tape to secure the 2 test tubes, and hey presto, it's done. The new test tube I provided has much more space, and obviously it's a whole lot cleaner. Anyway, there we have it, all my ant colonies compiled into one video. As I said at the start, I don't have very many ant colonies, especially for an ant keeping channel. Although, this season I plan on catching heaps of different species, and maybe I could make this same video this time next year, and compare how many colonies I keep. Anyway, as always guys, see you next week. Ant Invasion out.